Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name is Ivana, if you're new here, and it's been a long week. It's been a really newsy week today, and today we kind of cap it off with a big story on AL.com. If you've checked out the website this morning, you might have seen it, and that is a story about Kevin Greeson. Now, Mr. Greeson was a person who died at the Capitol last week on January the 6th, the same day as those Capitol protests, and he was not named as being somebody that was involved in violence. He actually died outside of the Capitol of a heart attack. So we have a deep dive into Mr. Greeson's life, his latest kind of online posts, a lot of them very expletive ridden and calling out certain people, especially Democrats in Washington. So our own Connor Sheets, our investigative reporter, broke that story, and he's here today to give us the details on it and kind of walk us through what he learned while investigating Mr. Greeson's life. So Connor, thanks for jumping on, explaining this to us. That was a really interesting story you had this morning.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So we're going to put the link to that story here in the comments. So if anybody hasn't seen it, you can click on it and get it there. But we're going to hit the highlights here today. And something that I think is so fascinating and that a lot of people will be interested by is that Mr. Greeson, who again died outside the Capitol on the 6th of a heart attack, he was there supporting Donald Trump and this Stop the Steal movement. But in 2009, you noted that Mr. Greeson actually supported then President Barack Obama and actually went to President Obama's first inauguration. How did that happen?
So, I mean, that's kind of what the whole story is about, is this evolution from, back in 2009 and years before that, he was a longtime union worker at the Goodyear plant in Decatur. He was actually like a union leader, low-level union leader there, and, supported Democratic causes, was a Democrat, and, watched a lot of, kind of left wing, more centrist media, CNN. His wife actually said AL.com, other sources. And, over time, to the point where he was such a fan of Obama's that he actually drove from Alabama to DC, went to the inauguration, not to protest him, but to be in support of him. And, over time, we see this evolution where some of the things I'm sure we're going to talk about now, basically over these intervening 12 years, he became increasingly more, interested in right-wing politics, particularly Trump, particularly in the last couple of years. And, as he saw, what he perceived as Trump doing good things for the economy, and, the economy doing better for him in stock market and that type of thing. That's what his wife says was really his driving force towards becoming interested in Trump, was this idea that he was helping the economy.
So we have Mr. Greeson starting out in 2009 as a pretty staunch Obama supporter, staunch enough to drive from from Alabama to Washington, D.C. That's not a short drive. Making that drive to see then President Obama inaugurated. And then, like you said, in those 12 years, becoming so supportive of somebody very opposite of then President Obama, and that's President Trump. Coming such a supporter of President Trump that he drives again to the Capitol to protest. Now, in those 12 years, what did you learn happened to Mr. Greeson? What did Mr. Greeson change about his life that turned him into such a staunch Trump supporter?
Yeah, I mean, so that's, there's a lot of things that combine, but I think one of the main things was, so he was working at this Goodyear plant. His father worked there before him. This is in Decatur, Alabama, North Alabama. And, this job was a union job. It paid well. I guess his father probably raised him on the money from there. And, it was a good, solid job. And there were a lot of those type of jobs up in North Alabama, like in a lot of regions of the country. And, they were union, like we said. He was involved in the union. The year he ended up leaving the company was 2006. That's the same year that that specific Goodyear plant was bought by a Korean company. And after that happened, some of the wages were lowered, and they had some of the things that happen anytime a company's bought, and it goes out of being a union company and that type of thing. So he ended up, we're not exactly sure if he lost his job or what happened, but he ended up leaving the company, having to move around for a while, and just over time seeing sort of this economic trajectory that had happened in that region. And at the same time, that was sort of, as that was ongoing, as it got closer to where Trump was running for office and that type of thing, he started shifting away from the sources of media that he used to consume, the CNN and AL.com and whatever else, and according to his wife, and towards more of like, this Fox News was first, and then from there, apparently, according to some social media postings he had and his wife, he moved towards Newsmax, which is like a pretty far right publication that's really in support of Trump and has been pushing this narrative that the election's been stolen and that type of thing. So you kind of see this evolution over time, and there's a lot of factors that go in together, but those are two of the biggest ones. Is sort of his media consumption was driving him towards these ideas and sort of seeing things through a certain lens, a very hyper-partisan lens, and at the same time, he had this whole thing going on with like his economic situation.
So we know that he left that job at that former Goodyear plant in 2006. 2009, supporter of President Obama. Do we know if Mr. Greeson supported President Obama in that 2012 election?
So that we don't actually know. So we were not able to talk to the wife directly. She talked to us through a lawyer, and sometimes the answers were not as I could have talked to her for hours, and I'm sure we could ask a lot of things, but we don't know exactly when it happened. It does seem that he got much more conservative since Trump got elected, though. I mean, if I had to guess, I'm not going to venture a guess, but I would say the level of right wing that he got was later on rather than earlier. It wasn't during Obama's first term or anything that we can tell. It seems like it was later. So that would be my.
So it seems like from 2016 on, in the past 4 to 5 years, that we can see that transformation of that political transformation, we can say, of Mr. Greeson. Now we know recently, and I mean recently is in about November, December, Mr. Greeson did take to Parler, which is a social media site that is used by many right-wing activists. And he said on Parler in several different messages that, one, he voiced his support for the Proud Boys, two, that former President Obama should be put to death, and also that Speaker Nancy Pelosi he hoped would die of COVID-19. Those were all Parler messages that have been posted by Mr. Greeson in the last couple of months. And to go from somebody who was enough of a supporter of President Obama to drive DC to now saying that President Obama should be put to death. And again, that was just a few months ago. That shows a pretty radical transformation in a pretty short amount of time, a decade or a little bit above.
Yeah, I mean, and I think those are just a few of his Parler posts. And so, like you said, like Parler is sort of what happened was people that were kind of being kicked off Twitter or Facebook are kind of being censored in their terminology. I mean, essentially it's censorship, basically saying you can't be on here anymore. Your views are not welcome, whether they were abusive or hate speech or whether they were just sort of outside of the norm. I mean, it's hard to, a large number of people were sort of moving towards sites like this that were engaging in, more right-wing ideas. And so it became a haven in some ways for things like the Proud Boys movement, which I think is, a pretty white supremacist movement, things like that, but also some more mainstream right-wing people too. And so, but if you look back, I mean, some of his earlier Parler posts are kind of more quasi, a little more in the realm of mainstream ideas. But as you get closer to January 6th, he really did start posting some really violent stuff, including saying lock and load, I'm bringing my guns to DC, stuff like that. And so, I mean, you're really talking about pretty extreme rhetoric, almost threat level stuff. So
now we know that Parler is not accessible at the moment. The people who host that server of that website have not, renewed the space on their server for Parler, so you can't access it right now. But you did take a screenshot, we can say, of one of the Parler messages, and that said, and this was from Mr. Greeson, quote, "Let's take this effing country back, load your guns and take to the streets," end quote. That was posted on December the 17th. From December the 17th through January the 6th, what other kinds of messages did Mr. Greeson post? Were any of them regarding DC?
Yeah, I mean, so the exact dates of everything are hard to remember. It really feels like most of the most hardcore posts were between, there's a bunch of stuff that happened right after the election, around the time it was called for Joe Biden. That's when he said he's going to switch over he's going to quit Facebook and only use Parler. He's not watching Fox News anymore. They've, quote, jumped ship, and he's going to only use Newsmax. And then I can't exactly remember, but this is all within a couple month period. All these posts we're talking about. He also mentioned, death to President Obama, some of these other more violent rhetoric. And he had a number of these posts that were saying, there's another one I think that's quoted in the story where he's basically saying to Congress, you're a bunch of cowards. Why are you allowing the election to be stolen? You call yourself a Republican, that type of thing. And this, and none of it really rises to the level of like, I'm going to kill Obama. He should be put to death. Congress needs to do this. I'm coming with guns. So you put it all together and it's threatening, but I don't know that he's, quote, directly threatening anyone. So, which there's a lot of this type of language on Parler. I mean, the interesting thing is it's not really a huge outlier. I mean, there's tons of people on there saying this type of thing, and it wasn't being policed very heavily, but I think people weren't taking it that seriously. It's sort of just empty kind of forum chatter. But then if something like this happens on January 6th, you have to go back and you look at these things and you say, these people like him were saying this in the open on it. I mean, it's a public site. You can just sign up for it up until it was taken down.
Now, on January the 5th, we do know from the attorney representing the Greeson family, or kind of being a mediator there, that Mr. Greeson drove to D.C. to participate in this, quote, Stop the Steal protest and movement to demonstrate for President Trump. And his wife did say that she did not believe that he had any intention of committing violence. And we should say that he has not been charged with any crimes relating to those protests at the Capitol. Police have not said that they have found any type of weapon or any type of dangerous object on him. He actually did die of a heart attack outside of the Capitol. He was not inside the Capitol. And you actually have a line in your story that says he was pronounced dead a few minutes before protesters breached the Capitol. So he was actually already dead before any of the actual breaching of the Capitol, the rioting inside those Capitol buildings, and that violence began. We know that his wife said that it was in the excitement that he had a heart attack. What else do we know about his death, Connor?
So he was on the phone with his wife, according to her, when he had the heart attack. So he literally, the phone goes dead. She thought he hung up on her, finds out later that he had a heart attack that led to his death. He died at 2:05 p.m. on January 6th. That's what's in the incident report, which means, that's the official time of death from the EMTs or police. It's the police report, actually. So, yeah. And we know that the Capitol was breached, according to the New York Times, put a very, blow by blow, minute by minute thing together. And it was breached something between 6 and 11 minutes after when he died. So there's no way he was in the Capitol, and also there's no evidence that he tased himself. So there's this whole narrative that he tased himself, and all, it's weird rumors out there about how he died. There's a rumor that he was tased himself to death while he was trying to steal a Tip O'Neill painting. And, it was a very viral rumor that was very widely spread, but there's no evidence of that at all. But, so he had a heart attack. I think it was a New York Times reporter and a EMT of some kind that gave him CPR. Both of them talked to his wife. Both of them said he wasn't inside the Capitol. So what we know is that he was outside the Capitol. There's no accusations that he was engaged in violence. Like you said, there's no accusations that he committed any crimes. But he was there after having posted those things, and he did die during the events. So yeah.
It is just it's a very interesting transformation. It's a very interesting past decade of this man's life. I'm looking at a couple of comments. I've got a comment from Ron who copied and pasted actually the comment or the Parler post. I'm not sure what those posts are called from your story actually here in the comments. And I just want to say that the one that Ron wrote is correct. That was the one I was referencing, saying, let's take this effing country back, load your guns and take to the streets. That was posted by Mr. Greeson on Parler on December the 17th. Now, Connor, what was the most important thing you took away from doing the reporting on this story? I know you spent a lot of time doing this kind of deep dive into Mr. Greeson, into his life. Did you take away any understanding as to what would have moved him to feel so passionately that he would drive up to the Capitol to protest? Or what did you take away from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two bigger takeaways I would say are, one is that the power of media, whether it's, news media or Facebook, social media, whatever, YouTube, anything, any form of, especially online media or TV media has, we think that, you say, oh, Fox News is saying this, MSNBC is saying this. That's just sort of something that's out in the ether. And you just kind of, a lot of people know how to handle that and listen to different competing views and and siphon it and figure out what's actually going on. But you can see through watching its impact on someone like this, that in the wrong hands, someone can really become very radicalized by false ideas. And then that combined with some of this economic isolation he was feeling, and just sort of some of what was going on politically, in a way that I think is happening across the country. And I think he's a unique case of someone who actually acted on it by going to the Capitol, but obviously there's thousands of people there, or hundreds of people, whatever. And also just the concept that someone mentioned this, a reader mentioned this to me, the idea that these are not all, anyone who's at this rally is not necessarily someone who's been in the right wing, on the right wing side for their entire lives. There's a large number of people. You look at the statistics on voting, you hear people talk about this all the time. They voted for Obama in 2008. They didn't like what he did, and then by 2016, they're voting for Trump, and maybe they're not voting for him by now. And a lot of this stuff is, it's easy to put people in boxes and say, well, they must have had, whatever conclusions you draw about anyone, those are not necessarily hard and fast political beliefs and things like that. And these things can all be impacted by everything going on in the world. It's a very complicated mix of things that contributed to him becoming someone that was so dedicated to this false narrative. But, it's something that I think we need to be aware of going forward.
Really important story, Connor, and very well done. Again, we've got that link to that story by Connor Sheets here in the comment thread. You can click on that and read everything that Connor and I were just talking about, see some of those messages posted to Parler, and also get more information there. So, Connor, really appreciate you coming on, breaking this down a little bit for us, and just kind of explaining something that a lot of us have to wonder.
Thank you so much. It was good.
Thanks, Connor. Thank you to everybody watching. Please stay safe this weekend. And also, I hope you enjoy your holiday on Monday, if Monday is a holiday for you. And I will see you on Tuesday.